Thank you for being back with your drinks and being punctual, as we always say. That really is what makes our evening so special, is you. Next up is a conversation that I'm personally really excited about, because it's two women. We've called the session Acute Angle, because both women, in different ways, are that acute angle in an industry and a landscape that seeks to create a flat landscape. With that capacity for the acute angle to create a wedge in the door, they have both made it possible to be different, as well as expanded the center and what we call the mainstream. Both these women have many things in common. The first one that struck me is that they're both Bengalis in a Punjabi world, both literally and metaphorically. They're both women with oceanic eyes. They are both reluctant actresses. They both bridge the world of art house and mainstream and what we today would like to call the modern hatke. They both made it possible for us to visualize and to imagine that cinema, other than populated by very beautiful white men and very beautiful white women, can exist and be meaningful and be something that we engage with. To speak about that capacity to create acute angles in a world that is completely flattened, ladies and gentlemen, first up, I'd like you to welcome Sharmila Tagore. But before I call her on stage, I want to show a small film that will recall for us. The reason I'm not going in for her resume is because that would take pretty much the entire session. There's a little anecdote I do want to share, which is that Sharmila started out in a reluctant way. She was 13 when Satyajit Ray literally discovered her coming back from school with one of those private detectives that Anandana was talking about, and literally catapulted her into the world of cinema. And then two films later, Shakti Samanta discovered her and asked her to come to Bombay, and she did Kashmir Ki Kali. And then she said that she wanted to give up films altogether because she didn't like or at least give up mainstream cinema. Instead, like Gandhari, she went on to do almost 100 and created 100 Sons. So it would be impossible to speak of all of that, but here's a little film that will evoke for us the magic of Sharmila Tagore. So ladies and gentlemen.
ये चांद सा रोशन चेहरा, जुल्फों का रंग सुनहरा, ये झील सी नीली आंखें, कोई राज है इनमें गहरा। तारीफ करूं क्या उसकी जिसने तुम्हें बनाया। एक चीज कयामत भी है, लोगों से सुना करते थे, तुम्हें देख के मैंने माना, वो ठीक कहा करते थे, वो ठीक कहा करते थे। है चाल में तेरी जालिम कुछ ऐसी बला का जादू, 100 बार संभाला दिल को पर हो के रहा बेकाबू। तारीफ करूं क्या उसकी जिसने तुम्हें बनाया। ये चांद सा रोशन चेहरा, जुल्फों का रंग सुनहरा, ये झील सी नीली आंखें, कोई राज है इनमें गहरा। तारीफ करूं क्या उसकी जिसने।
मैंने तुमसे कितनी बार कहा है पुष्पा, मुझसे ये आंसू नहीं देखे जाते। आई हेट टीयर्स।
जानती है अगर इस वक्त मेरी माँ होती तो क्या कहती? कहती हाय बेटा ये तुमने क्या किया, 100 बार तुम्हें कहा था फौज में भर्ती मत हो, तू मेरी एक ही एक औलाद है, इस बार तो बच गया, बात दोबारा कैसे क्या होगा, रोने लगती।
अपने बच्चों की खातिर कभी न कभी हर माँ को रोना पड़ता है। कोई आंसू बहाकर रोती है और कोई आंसू पीकर।
तारीफ करूं क्या उसकी जिसने तुम्हें बनाया।
ले पकड़ और जाकर मार अपनी बीवी के सर पे। चले आते हैं सब साले। तू क्या देख रहा है सेठ? चूसकी मारनी है तो ऊपर आ, नहीं तो फूट यहाँ से।
जिसने तुम्हें बनाया तारीफ करूं क्या उसकी, जिसने तुम्हें बनाया तारीफ करूं क्या उसकी, जिसने तुम्हें बनाया।
Ladies and gentlemen, Sharmila Tagore. That's right.
So thank you for a quick journey for the last, what, 50 years or 60 years or something?
Yes.
Not bad.
As I said, I didn't even launch into describing your work because that would have taken the entire session, you know. But so, Sharmila, I'd love to start with, as I said, that accidental beginning. You know, you were 13
But
and
may I just say something? Like you said something about Punjabi, Bengalis in a Punjabi world. But I just want to say that Bollywood, Hindi films, it's not just Punjabi and Bengali. There's so many cultures and so many languages. In that hybrid context, I mean, if it's anything, it's enriching, really. So it's not just Bengalis are very nakuchu and intellectual and Punjabis are not. But so it is really in that, it's not a clash of cultures, but it is a confluence of
no,
cultures.
absolutely. Yeah. Me being a Bengali married to a Punjabi, I totally agree. I absolutely agree, as I said, that married to a Punjabi, that it's the hyphen that enriches us. You know? But as I said, I wanted to start with this, you know, with Satyajit Ray. And I'm going to very quickly remind everybody that you were 13, you were coming home from school, someone knocks at your door. He literally had spies everywhere looking for this young bride in Opur Shanchar, and he picked you. And you, of course, had to be expelled from school pretty much to be able to take part in that film. Everybody knows the, you know, the big reasons why Satyajit Ray is the master he was. But from your own experience, specifically, what made him great for you? You know, what was your experience of him?
Well, when I worked with him, of course, I was 13, and I wasn't really thinking of, you know, I was just looking at him and not analyzing him or appreciating him. But now when I look back, and all of you here who've been familiar with Ray's work, or you've seen his image sitting in his Spartan home, surrounded with books, paint brushes, pen. So immediately you realize this is just a man of ideas. And he pioneered new sensibility in films and filmmaking that compelled the world to take note of Indian cinema. Before he arrived on the scene, the films were hugely reliant on dialogues, and he introduced restraint. He liberated, actually, scenes from very verbose scenes, and many sequences were built up just with music, like in Shimabodho and Sadgati's, the final scenes, and Charulata's, the beginning, you know, the introduction, when she's bored and looking through the binoculars, and Oppu and Durga finding, caught in a thunderstorm. So all that was done, and in every which way, like he didn't believe in stars. He worked with newcomers. He continuously mixed professionals and veterans with newcomers, and you really couldn't tell the difference. And he wasn't really interested in heroes. It was the heroic struggle of an ordinary person that interested him. And even when he worked with stars like Wahida Rehman or Amjad or Uttam Kumar, he used them against their grain. So he did many things, you know, the one, like you said, I can carry on forever. And he never allowed style to override content. His sound of music, the background music, he's the first one who introduced neighbors, ordinary sounds, like radio from the neighbor's house, a dog barking, or a tap going tip, 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 and passing trucks. So that, he used that to raise the emotive register of his films. So there are many aspects that he completely changed. And he was very hardworking, very committed, and he had no use for money except to buy books and music. So I've not really seen anybody like that. And everything he came to the sets totally prepared, and we couldn't afford to take more than 1 or 2 takes because there was never enough money. And it was a technological battle for him because there used to be load shedding. When the film is in the lab, people would understand. He would lose frames. And the floor of the studio was so bad that a trolley shot was almost impossible. And yet, with that budget, he competed with the best in the world, like Kurosawa, like Bergman, who had much better budgets and won awards. And his women in his films, because everywhere else at that popular cinema, the women existed vis-a-vis the hero, as their lover or as their romantic interest or mother, bhabhi, whatever. So these were protagonists in their own right. And he used to describe them as, in the context of Fujiyama, as Kurosawa used to say, calm, fire within and calm without. So I think his way of looking at cinema was so different. And I think today, culture travels in mysterious ways. And today, after that, of course, Shyam Benegal took it further. And today, what we see in multiplex, and Konkona is sitting here, and everybody, without knowing, perhaps, they are influenced by him. His legacy and the influence that he's left behind, and given his many concerns. And today, after so many years after his death and, after he made his last film, he remains in our discourse and in our consciousness. So I think he was a great filmmaker.
Before we move on, part of our focus of conversation today is to really look at that, both not just the difference between art house, or what we called art house, or what today is the modern hatke, which Konkona represents, and the mainstream, but also the bridge between them. So I'm going to come to your other directors. But I was reading somewhere that today we admire the fact that directors have finally started giving scripts to people. But is it true that Satyajit Ray used to give each of his actors a handwritten script with illustrations by him? Is that true?
They're my absolute, treasured possessions. Handwritten script with images also, like each frame, how it would look. And yes, we got that, and we were expected to read it, but not memorize the dialogues. We were told specifically that don't memorize
not to
anything.
Memorize it.
No, he didn't believe in workshops or too much, and especially with newcomers. He didn't want them to think too much about the
And
film.
so is it that you were spontaneously acting on set?
He would just, later we used to see, as Brando said of Chaplin, that even if he gave us a telephone directory, we would say yes. Yeah.
And just one other little personal detail before we move on. I think you've mentioned somewhere that he was a giant, towering man, but he made himself almost diminutive, not to intimidate.
I've seen him work with children, and I was 13 and a child myself. And he would, being very tall, he would somehow, make eye contact with you, come very close to you, and just read out the scene once. And somehow, you understood what he said. It wasn't difficult. He didn't make you nervous. There are some directors who will come and say, imagine yourself like a flower, you're withering in the sun, and and it's very difficult to understand because we can't sort of think that we are a flower. It's difficult to imagine, but he would convey and communicate so well, and never make you conscious. And it was so wonderful to know that he's there behind the camera looking out for you. You knew that you could never look bad, you could never be terrible at all because, he was there to lift you up.
Is that why you never had your bouffant in his films?
Unlike Hrishikesh Mukherjee's Anupama, yes. No, I wouldn't dare.
So, just two more questions before we bring Konkona into the conversation. As I asked that, what about the other directors? So you moved from a giant like Satyajit Ray into Bollywood cinema, what is called Bollywood mainstream cinema, and there were giants there themselves who you worked with, Shakti Samanta and Hrishikesh Mukherjee, a whole lot of
There
them.
were quite a few raised eyebrows when I did that. Moved from, Satyajit Ray's, they were used to be very possessive those days. How could she go to Bombay? It was a kind of betrayal. But I did. I felt that was the natural progression from regional cinema to the pan-Indian cinema. And the first day, the first film was quite a challenge. The lip sync, these playback songs, which was very unusual in Bengali films, we didn't have that. So that and the language and all these Urdu writers used to be hugely on my case with Gaf and Qaf and Nukta and this. Now, of course, there's no Nukta also and any kind of pronunciation. Now the scripts are written in Roman and it's so confusing because H-A-I-N and I said, can we have it in Devanagari, please, so that I can understand? So it's all changed. But yes, I worked with quite a few, like Bashu Bhattacharya and Gulzar and Hrishikesh Mukherjee and many others, Mohan Saigal, Raj Khoslas and others, and also Manmohan Desai and Shakti Samantas, who were the mainstream filmmakers.
So the question I wanted to ask was that how did they use you creatively differently from the way Satyajit Ray was using you? And what about that attracted you? As I said, you said you were going to quit Hindi cinema after Kashmir Ki Kali. What made you change your mind? What bug bit you?
I would sign one film and say no to 5 films, and then that's how it went on. And Shashi used to make fun of that. No, I think it's a different set of skills. And this is undoubtedly what Hindi cinema has done for me, has given a pan-Indian visibility. And I remember I sometimes used to rubbish Hindi films at the beginning. And I remember meeting this delegation from South Africa. And they said that every Sunday we used to dress up and go and see your song and dance films. And you were our only connection to India. What better praise, what better tribute to the reach and impact of Hindi cinema. So I think popular cinema offers it's everything to everybody. And it has its own convention of telling a story. And you have to understand that. And now that films are changing, and I hope they don't lose all those beautiful techniques that they had, like songs, lip songs, which now people are very embarrassed about and moving away from it. But I think they had a way of telling stories which reached out to everybody. And people reacted all over India, despite their differences, somehow responded, whether you were seeing the film in Assam or Kashmir, in the same place they cried, the same place they laughed, the same place they got bored. And in the newspaper, you will see reading all the differences and all the fights and all the conflicts. But when they were watching Hindi cinema, you only saw the commonality and not this kind of conflict. So Hindi cinema has done a lot, I think, to bring the country together.
But there are two such, I'm going to ask you about Devi and then bring Konkona on, but just before that, there's a kind of abandon and flirtatiousness and coquetry in this, in so many of the films we were just watching. And then there's the intense, smoldering work that you did with Satyajit Ray. And then there's the composed Begum of Pataudi and, the sort of epitome of elegance that we see today. Which one of these is really you? And do you regret not... that abandon, was that something the directors forcing out of you, or was that really a part of you waiting to come out?
No, I suppose when I was in front of the camera, I was paid to act, and I hope I did what they wanted me to do. Of course, there is a public face and a private face. But what you say, I don't live in compartments, and I'm not faking anything. I think I'm all that you have said, that you've listed. and it's I suppose there's various influences have come my way, and I have absorbed them and assimilated them, and they've helped me to shape me the way I am today. But it's happened slowly. It's a total person, not my leg is
Not
like
a
this
leg
and
in
my,
that,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Now, I'm going to come back to that conversation, but just, about Devi, because after Opur Shanchar, Satyajit Ray cast you when you were 14 as yet another child bride who's turned into this goddess figure, and you've said quite often that was the most seminal film for you.
Yeah.
Why do you say that? Why was that role so important for you?
Because I feel it remains so relevant, even today. There are so many girls out there that do not understand who they are. I mean, there's nothing more tragic than a person saying that, how can your father be wrong? And suppose I'm Devi, because I don't know how many of you know the story. The patriarch of the family thinks his daughter-in-law is the reincarnation of Kali, who's a mother goddess, who's a destroyer as well as a protector. And how this relentless worshipping unhinges her mind and removes her from everything that was dear to her. So, and she's unlettered, young, and she trusts her father-in-law. And when she's given a chance to run away from this, she said, but suppose he's right, and my running away will bring bad luck to you, Okullan habe. So it's, it's so tragic that you do not know who you are, and you cannot look for your individual growth, and you always putting your family before you. And it's happening even now in the name of religion, ritual, tradition, family. A woman continues to face injustice. So,
and is it true that Satyajit Ray had to face a lot of flack from the Hindus?
Yes, it was his most Hindu film, and people accused him that it was, being a Brahmo. But he wasn't against Hinduism per se. He was criticizing the bigoted, the superstitious way it was done. So yes, it was. There was a huge protest when they released.
So, earlier when I was introducing Sharmila, I was saying that one of the reasons we wanted to celebrate both these women is because they were and are that wedge in the door that allows for the conversations that otherwise would not happen, an opening up of imagination that would otherwise not happen. So it's a perfect entry point at which to bring the new generation of the wedge makers onto the stage. Konkona Sen Sharma already has clocked almost 40 films, and that's a massive body of work for someone so young. But amongst them are some absolute gems, which we're all familiar with. But there's another reason why we are particularly celebrating Konkona today, and that is because she's done her directorial debut, A Death in the Ganj, which is an absolutely masterpiece of a film, and I would urge all of you who haven't seen it to see it. And so before we call her onto stage, rather than looking also at her canvas of work, we thought we'll focus just on that particular piece that completely embodies her imagination. So those of you who haven't caught it and those of you who have, Death in the Ganj, and then we'll welcome Konkona onto the stage.
Hey, did you do? আছিস তো?
ভালো আছে।
Exams over?
Yes, over আমার।
Hey, Sudu, open the dicky for me.
চলো চলো চলো।
Hey, Shotu, just get my shawl. Now it's on that tag.
You want to keep him?
Can I?
No.
What are we calling this one?
Fluffy.
And who's going to look after Fluffy when we go back? Shotu.
Tani, see what I found?
Oh, wow, Shutu. Ugh, what's that?
That's a butterfly.
Phew.
दारू पियत हैं, भूत बोलावत हैं।
Who in this room is going to die first? Is it going to be Mimi? Shuttu?
Tani?
अरे she must be with Shuttu ना?
Tani is not with you. Vikram, stop it!
Tani!
I've been with her every day and you've never had a problem.
Maybe if we bend the knees and put the body in a fetal position.
Ladies and gentlemen, Konkona Sen Sharma and her world. Thank you, Konkona.
So excited to be here with you on the same stage. So honored, so thrilled.
You have to know why we are acute angle, because my geometry knowledge is nil. So you have to explain what this acute angle is all about.
Yeah, less than 90.
Were you good in maths?
Good at maths? Well, I always do a literary interpretation of everything mathematical, you know. So the acute angle, as I said, was to really create angularities and wedges in an otherwise very homogeneous world. It's only as mathematical as that, you know, as mathematical as algebra is, actually.
Oh, right. Oh, it's algebra.
Well, Konkona, I again just want to bring you into the conversation before we go back to making this three-way conversation, which was, you know, this film is just like such a gem, and without giving away too much about it, can you, for those who haven't seen it yet, can you speak a little bit about that central character of Shuttu, you know, that what about him gripped you so much to make a film, move out of acting, do something so difficult as to, you know, make a film on a low budget about another era? It's really the character that drew you again and again. So just describe him a little bit.
So the protagonist is a boy called Shuttu. His name is Shamul Chatterjee, but we hardly ever hear that in the film. And I have to say that he's like a lot of him is based on me and my experiences. I think that, you know, my parents used to have a house in McCluskeyganj, which is about an hour and a half away from Ranchi, and we used to go there a lot as kids. And I used to hear many stories from my parents about that time and about those holidays. And, you know, many family anecdotes, some bizarre, some funny. It's a very quiet, sleepy little Anglo-Indian town, established in 1933 by E.G. McCluskey, and it's kind of died out after the 80s, 90s, it kind of just died out. And there was this, you know, just a few stories of that time which really stayed with me. I knew a very basic kind of version of the story, which is everybody went on this holiday, they did this planchet, and how, you know, they came to fulfill the prophecies of a fake planchet. And that in itself just fascinated me so much and stayed with me for so long. I heard the story when I was 8 or 9, and I used to tell my father to tell me the story again and again. And I find that, you know, when a loved one tells you a story, they imbue it with so much, and they tell you stories again and again, same stories often they tell again and again. And, you know, they imbue it with so much love, and you know, they really evoke a certain time and a certain place very specifically for me, which I always wanted to kind of capture and recreate, possibly as, you know, wanting to recreate my childhood, wanting to recreate my parents' imagined youth.
But you know, we were talking, Sharmila was saying that Devi in some ways was the character that she, at least that was the role that she most cherishes or remembers as being important. I found it fascinating that out of all these 40 films that you've done, you know, you've said somewhere that you actually don't identify with any of the characters that you've played. You usually play the very goody girl, you know, the mature.
Morally upright.
Moral upright, you know, and you don't feel any of that. And curiously, you picked two characters that you feel very close to. One was the character of Meethi in 15 Park Avenue, who's actually a schizophrenic girl. And you picked Shutu, who is extremely tremulous, low self-esteem, you know, very sensitive man, but really someone of low self-esteem. So I found that fascinating, you know, that you picked these two characters. Is that saying a lot about you?
I think so, yeah. Because I think I picked Meethi, who was a schizophrenic, because I found that in the depiction of Meethi, in the portrayal of that character, I didn't have to follow the regular norms and conventions of a woman acting in a film, you know, how she behaves. You didn't have to adhere to any kind of strict codes of reality or strict social conventions, which are so boring, and all the time we're all adhering to it anyway. It's convenient, I guess. But, you know, so it was very freeing and very uninhibited in that sense. I enjoyed, you know, playing that character. And Shutu also I felt very close to, because I feel, you know, there are people, there's so many people we overlook, you know, and so many voices we don't hear. And that's often because many other people are shouting very loudly, saying, look at me, and these are my problems, these are my problems. So, and the people who are not saying these things very loudly, we often don't hear them. Yeah. We don't listen to that. And very often I find we're so caught up in our own everyday, I mean, daily life can sometimes be overwhelming, I understand that. That, you know, we actually don't take the care to look at another person as an individual. You know, we want them to perform certain, you know, they should check all the boxes, they should behave in these, you know, conventions, these codes of behavior. So then it's very convenient for everybody to kind of go on with their lives.
But, you know, one of the strands in the film that comes through again and again in Death in the Ganj is the almost casual cruelty that Shutu's character is subjected to by his nearest and dearest ones, you know. Again, just to probe that, not to take it too autobiographically, but because you said a great deal of that is based on you. Did you feel in your growing up years, because you were different, because you weren't claiming attention in some loud and mainstream way, that you in many ways went through that kind of casual cruelty?
I was a very shy and introverted child. And what happened is that, you know, I hadn't planned on becoming an actor. So when I became well known, I could very clearly see how people are treating me very differently. And it was very amusing. So, you know, but your formative years are your childhood and your early growing years, those teenage years, they are, I mean, you know, they form really the crux of who you are, I feel, in many ways, you know, deep down inside. So those experiences have really stayed with me. I find that That was one thing that I felt very much like Shutu, and that we don't listen to people like that. I also became, but I was able to overcome that in a way that maybe Shutu wasn't, because I very early on became very comfortable with the fact that I'm different or my family is different.
Okay. So, Sharmila, I wanted to move away now from the hatke back into the mainstream, because when you finally agreed to come and speak here, I have to say all the women in our office have not been working and have only been humming your songs, and have been sort of just in a kind of dream of nostalgia about your films and the kind of romance that you embodied. So what is different, I think, in the way both of you approach mainstream and the off the beaten track films is that you really embraced it with a kind of, with vigor and with enjoyment. So could you share with us, you acted with some of the most iconic heroes of your time. Can you share with us some light-hearted details which Shammi Kapoor, Amitabh Bachchan, Rajesh Khanna, Shashi Kapoor, all of them. Can you just tell us some individual characteristic about them?
But I just want to say to people who haven't seen Death in the Ganj, you have to see it, otherwise you haven't lived. Seriously, it is the best film ever that I have seen. And not because I'm saying it to Konkona, because she's sitting here, and I really want to see it. And it has to be seen on the big screen, because the way this wonderful director, new director, the way she understands the medium of cinema, from dialogues, the screenplay, and the sound, the way she's used sound. And we all know what her budget must have been, I don't know. And the photography, and not a single desire to, the first time directors wants to say everything, and they're not happy with saying it once just in case you missed it. So they want to say it over and over again. No such temptation. And it's a layered, on the surface it's a kind of film, then there is another layer where there is gender, where Tanuja says boys will be boys, and the foreign, the foreigners are like this, and little dialogues that are just thrown away here, and Kalki is just fantastic. So, it's a must, guys, you have to see it. Don't take my word for it, you should have and you have to see it on the theater, that's the main thing. I hope
this is being recorded for posterity.
Thank
you, you're the perfect
I've compared
audience,
it to
thank you.
Satyajit Ray, by the way. I've said after Satyajit Ray, there is this girl.
Oh God, that is really huge.
Yeah. And no, I mean it. I really mean it. And in here, so now
I'm going to come back to discussing her film and that world. I just felt we were being a bit unfair to the mainstream by not.
No, I just have to tell you, but I don't know. I think you are encouraging me to be unfair to the mainstream by making me repeat all these stories, right? There was this scene in Avishkar. It's a very intense scene in the morning. The sun is rising. There's a kind of resolution scene. And Bashuto, unlike Konkona and Satyajit Ray, believed in huge dialogues, a lot of verbose scenes. So both of us are very intimate and looking at each other, and the sun is rising and beautiful light on our face. And I'm speaking my lines with a lot of emotion. And on my line, somebody from the back behind me is prompting Rajesh Khanna's dialogues. Da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. I mean, we're genius, the way we work. And Shamiji, of course, was something else. Shamiji was another thing. Like, he would do something in the rehearsal, and then he would do something else in the take completely. And you saw that helicopter scene when I'm water skiing and things, and showing a lot of leg and hanging from the helicopter. And then it was not in the script. He jumps on the boat. I mean, we could have all toppled, and yes. So he did that. So he was always doing something, and he did what all the young boys were doing much later. So yeah, I think, and all his songs are such big hits, and all the young people seem to like his films. And many others, I mean, who else? Dharam, of course. I remember I was, of course, as you know, I'd met Tiger and I had to go to Calcutta to watch the West Indies match. Hindsight, I shouldn't have gone because we lost miserably. And there was almost a riot in Eden Gardens. We had to run for our lives because, you know, Bengalis, they were burning the stadium. And yeah, after that they changed the stadium completely, sort of with inflammable stuff. So yeah, so I was working double shift. Those days the economics were not in place, and many people used to work in 4 or 5 films at a time. So continuity was a very difficult thing. In any case, I was working 7 to 2 shift with Dil Aur Mohabbat with Joy Mukherjee and 2 to 10 with Dharmendra in Mere Hamdam Mere Dost. And we were shooting a song called Chalkaye Jam. And we started at 2, but by even 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, we realized that we cannot finish it. And the next day I was going to, so I asked Dharam, I said, please, Kardo, you know, I have to go. And he was so sweet. He extended. We worked till 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning, and we finished so, you know, who else would do that nowadays? Nobody would do. And so that was, and then next day, of course, I went. So many people, and Shashi, I remember one day I said, I want to pack up, because I was a great one for packing up at 6:30 and going home. So he said, but do you mind if these junior artists gets little overtime? And what's with you? So I realized, yes. And with Sanjeev, I remember I was arguing with my South Indian director, because South Indians were very, very careful not to change even a single line, because all the dialogues used to come from Bombay, and they were not clear about the language bit. So there was something about Mera Dil Huk Uthega. So I said, who talks like this, Huk Uthega? So it carried on and on and on. So Sanjeev was looking, I said, it's cutting into my drinking time, so will you please, you know, wrap it up? I know Bengalis are very argumentative, but... So finally he said, don't have to feel it, you fake it. Now just see how I'm going to do. And he did it. And he said, this is what you're paid for. So why are you arguing and wasting our time? So I really, you know, so I think I've had a wonderful, you know, co-stars, and I've really learned a lot from
So is this, before we are back to the serious conversation, is this an apocryphal story that you were so enamored of Shashi Kapoor's curly lashes that you pressed an accelerator instead of a brake?
No, not quite. By that time I had got, you know, wasn't reacting to his eyelashes anymore. But before that I had seen Prem Patra, before I came to work in Kashmir Ki Kali. And I couldn't sleep for 2 nights because he was so gorgeous looking. And then I was working for Isharo Mein, and he was a fan of mine because he'd seen Opur Shangshar, and he came to see the shooting. And of course, I just kind of became pale and I couldn't work. So Shakti ji said, will you please go out and leave my heroine alone? So he did that. Then we saw the rushes and I started crying. I said, this is my last film. I'm looking terrible. It was Eastman color, so... And the makeup is terrible, and I'm acting and going back. Your mother, of course, left immediately. She says, Zera mera bas ka nahi hai. Your Hindi films, you're welcome to it. I'm going. So Reena left. But I kind of, by the end of Kashmir Ki Kali, I was quite enjoying the dancing and the singing. Yeah.
So again, just before I come back to Konkona and the shaping of that differential imagination, you know, you mentioned that you had met Tiger and you were married, and it's really quite radical, Sharmila, that you continued to act at that time, post your marriage, and also that you had married into a gharana, what one imagines is a very, you know, filled with tehzeeb and with custom and with antiquity and all of that. How did Tiger cope with that? How did the two of you manage that dynamic of male stardom, female stardom? Was he very anxious about all these handsome men that you were acting with, some of those steamy scenes? How did you both cope with that?
Well, I can't give you a day-to-day account. I'm sure we must have had our ups and downs. But basically, Tiger had a huge sense of self. I don't think he was threatened. And I don't think he always told me there are hundreds of actors, but there's only one cricket captain. So before you... so, yeah, see? Patriarchy. So anyway, so I don't think he got fed up, like he didn't expect me to wait dinner for him or pack for him. Or, of course, they're helpless, button kahan hai or joote kahan hai, and all that is a male, whatever, characteristic. But other than that, no, I don't think so. I don't think we had that problem. And also, I grew up in a joint family, and so that way the families weren't much different. They had chapati, we had rice, and Tiger couldn't bear fish, but they had kebabs. But these were the differences. But the thinking and at that level, there wasn't a difference. So I understood the family dynamic by growing up, so sharing and tolerance, because we didn't have a bedroom. We were picked up, we went to sleep here, we woke up in somebody else's. And if my aunt slapped me and I went to my mother, I got another slap. Why are you complaining? So we didn't possess anything also. So it was not a problem adjusting, really. And we also bunked. We didn't, we lived in Bombay. And then went to live with Amma after I had 3 children. So, and I got lots of advice from my hairdresser. Because we used
hairdresser?
Yeah, because we used to do this journey to work every day. And she would say, my mother-in-law did this, and, and this is what happened. I said, guys, you're so petty. How can you even talk like this? But you don't know, and, so she would cool off while then there was a friend lived on the 7th floor while I was on the... She would also come in a great huff and say, I need half an hour to cool down. My mother-in-law said this. So I said, what is this, mother? So when I went, I said, what did all those people say? I must remember now. Because, it's really quite a, sharing a car, and the children have to be collected from school, and I can see my brother-in-law going away with the car. So, I started hiding the car keys. So, yeah, there's a lot of adjustment. But it's what's the word I'm looking for? The benefit of living together with 3 generation or 4 generation is invaluable, and especially to the children. So there is nothing like this. Nucleus families, now you're seeing the cyberbullying and television, it really can't take place for this extended family. I think there is nothing like extended family.
So, we were talking about this kind of shaping of the imagination, and Sharmila was talking about growing up in a joint family where the slaps also were passed on from the aunt to the mom. But you grew up, Konkona, in a nuclear family. And also you were saying about how Aparna was very watchful and vigilant of what you were exposed to and not exposed to. I believe she didn't let you watch anything that was really overtly mainstream. So can you talk a little bit about that? What went into the shaping of who you are today?
Yeah. So, you know how they say it takes a village to raise a child? So now there's no village, there's barely a community, there's no joint family, and even the nuclear family is falling apart. So who do we have? I grew up also, my parents were divorced when I was 6 or 7. And I had good. They were very amicable. So I used to visit my father. I used to live with my mother. So I knew right from the start that it's not like most of my other friends. Somehow very early on, I mean that was my normal. That was my normal, and also I think because my mother was such a kind of very vibrant, full of life, very affectionate, very demonstrative. Kind of person, and in Bengali people would say akai aksho, like she made up for like so many people, that I really never felt a lack of love. And I think that was the most important, because even if she couldn't give as much time as perhaps some other mothers could, the quality of time she gave to me was amazing. We used to read poems together. She used to read aloud from Shakespeare. Sometimes she would even record Hoja Borolo and things like that, She would record Bengali poems and stories from me on the tape recorder. I would travel with her to all kinds of places. She really encouraged us to be free thinkers. And she
didn't allow you to watch Bold and Beautiful.
Yeah, she didn't allow me to watch Bold and Beautiful, Ramayana or Mahabharata. I say all in the same breath, deliberately. Or even some of the more mainstream films of the 80s and 90s when we were growing up. Of course, having said that, I watched the occasional Mr. India and, you know, like Sagar and things like that, which we adored as teenagers. But she was very particular, even if she found me reading the same kind of book. I remember she was, at one point, she said, "You're only reading Enid Blytons." So she would put away all the Enid Blytons and say, "Now you have to read other kinds of..." The only thing she didn't succeed as much with, I think, is with Bengali literature, though she really tried. But I think that, you know, we're going to English medium schools and everybody's speaking in English all around, that suffered a little bit. But, you know, she inhabited her own life and her own world with so much conviction in herself and so much self-belief, and did so much, you know, all the time for us to watch, and included me in so much that, you know, I was sometimes she edited a women's magazine, so sometimes after school I would go to the Shanada, the ABP office, and spend afternoons and evenings there doing my homework there. Sometimes I would go to the Moscow Film Festival with her. There were times when, you know, I would be on set with her, or, you know, there would be long production meetings going on at home, which I would participate in, and sometimes play on my own, that I'm making my own film and I'm doing the budget of my own film. I would direct her sometimes in my games and say, "Now you be the actress, I'm the director," when I'm all of 6 or 7. So it was a world that was filled with a lot of creativity, and take us to watch plays and all kinds of things. It was very involved, and my grandparents were also very involved. I had an older sister. So, and I think that in that sense, it was different from many of my friends' childhoods, possibly. But I was comfortable with that.
Sharmila, so, you know, just coming back to you, that even more, because in some ways, like Konkona was describing, maybe also the upbringing and what the value system that Aparna passed on to her. Like you said, Aparna exited Bollywood and said that wasn't her cup of tea. So in many ways, while Konkona has a large body of work, her sensibility really is very different. You, on the other hand, really did embrace both worlds, and you kept going back and doing Satyajit Ray's films while you were doing all the dancing that you were enjoying in mainstream cinema. So being this insider in both the traditions, what insight did that give you? You know, what perspective on India and the audiences? What did that yield for you?
Well, regional cinema is, you know, the audience is pretty loyal, and there is instant identification, because the audience is Bengali, the language that they're seeing on the film is Bengali, everybody is dressed in a Bengali attire, the locations are, so in every which way there is a connect. Whereas in a Hindi film, likewise with Tamil and other regional language, but in Hindi films they want to engage everybody. In our time, they wouldn't even have a surname. It'll be Mr. Deepak or Miss Aruna, because it can't be Pasricha or Tagore or something else, because then it'll be... So they were very ambivalent about. The maid servant would wear a ghagra choli, the lady of the house wear the sari in a Bengali way, like in Chandralekha, I don't know, very old film. The soldiers were in Roman helmet, and the king was wearing all these kingly stuff. The Chandralekha was in a modern, contemporary clothes. And so there were all kinds of discrepancies. But yet, they want to woo the... And I think that's why, like when, during the silent films, I digress a lot. When Sohini says this is a kind of cut that I do from here to there, like during silent film, there was no problem, it was an Indian. When it became, then they realized that you have to do many language. So somehow that Chandralekha kind of set the way Hindi films would be, a bit of this and bit of that. So it is difficult, but at the same time, they have perfected a technique and a device how to reach out to different people. So I think, you know, like to quote Ashish Nandi, I mean, you know, popular cinema has you know, when so many people see it, there has to be, we have to understand, we can't just rubbish a popular cinema, because it's saying something, and they have a particular way of telling that story. My personal experience is that when I go to see, when I go to work in a Bengali film, and I'm sure Konkona will also, if she ever cast me in a film, she'll say, well, don't take a little time, think about it, and then say your dialogue. This is not a Bombay film. And then when I work in Bombay, they'll say, this is not a Ray film. Can you speed it up a little bit? so that is my experience. But that's how it is, you know. It's a little different.
Well, you know, we've run out of time. I'm going to open this up to the audience. And if there's one thing I did want to ask you was about marrying, you know, you straddled so many worlds between being Hindu, Muslim, Brahmo, Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, Pataudi, you know, being a mother, wife, all of that. But we'll come back to that. I just want to open this up to the audience, and if there are any questions.
If I don't understand the question.
Yes. Yes, there's a question at the back.
Hi, Sharmila ji, and hi, Konkana. Sharmila ji, one thing, you know, we're hitting about 6 years since we lost Patodi Saab, and you know, before the Kohlis and before the Dhonis, there was one person who really instilled confidence in the Indian cricket team, that was Patodi Saab. Something light you can share about Patodi Saab you changed about him after your marriage, or perhaps when you were seeing him. Thank you.
It was in my marriage contract, you know, Nikah-nama, that I will never speak about cricket. So, because once I was showing off, I was talking to Peter May, no less, and I was extolling the virtue of leg cut. Then I got this massive kick under the table and said, it's late cut, woman, and I just shut up. So I don't know, what do you want me to, not about his cricket, but all I know that whenever I went to see him, if he dropped a catch, it was my fault. The entire stadium looked at me. Even my father in Kolkata, sitting miles away from me, looking, "Tumi nishchoy oke rattir bela ghumote daoni," you know. So like you kept him up all night. So it was my fault, you know. So it was always, and when he scored a century, then of course it was him. So it was like that. But I don't know, of course I miss him, and he was a wonderful person. And I think he had tremendous understanding of cricket, and he didn't ever have the need, like all of us when we are in a group, we want to, if people are discussing either politics or cinema or something, like I went on and told you about Death in the Ganj, we all want to add our own bit because we feel we know more. And Tiger really never had the need. You know, he would keep quiet, and all people were saying all kinds of things, but he would never speak up. And later on I would say, but why? So he said, well, where's the need? I mean, they think they know more than me, and it's all right. So I don't have to tell them. So he was very contained in himself and never really wanted to be, you know, anything. He was okay in his own skin.
I'm sorry, the light is in my eyes, I can't see.
One last comment. I think we should all have a big round of applause for 3 fantastic, mentally stimulating bongs sitting on the stage. So let's have a round of applause. I'm sorry I'm not from Shiv Sena, but it's fantastic to see all 3 of you. And Sharmila ji, one question for you is that you've been in the cinema for a long while. How has cinema evolved when you came in and now? Thank you.
Oh my God, that'll take, yes, but it's evolved a lot, like India has evolved. You know, our lives around us evolved. When we started, there was no cell phone, there was no television. Like in the 80s, for instance, when the television came, and also there was a demographical change. A lot of people from the villages started coming into urban areas. Mandalization happened. So the profile of the cinegoers changed, and that affected cinema. Like 80s cinema was the pits, because they had all these multi-starrers without anything, just to somehow woo the audience back. But the audience preferred to stay and watch TV, the middle class the middle of the viewers preferred that. So then the Dolby and the different sound system came, the theater was spruced up, and special effects came. So like that, the 30s cinema was different. In fact, if anything, 30s cinema was so progressive. There was 3 studios. One was Prabhat Studio, one was Bombay Talkies, one was New Theatres, and they made this fantastic films. And there was Durga Khote in Duniya Na Mane. At that time, when she was, the woman was forced to marry an aged man with 2 kids, and how she protested that. Amar Jyoti was fighting for the custody of a child. Achut Kanya. Now, these films were so progressive. Nadia didn't need a star. For 10 years, she was the sole draw of films. Then came the war, the Second World War. It changed values. Black money entered films. The star system came. Then it started getting more in favor of the male stars. The women were reduced to secondary roles. And that was still, the 50s was still good with Guru Dutt and Bimal Roy and, you know. But after that, the 60s, after the Chinese war, lack of hope, rise in employment, Hindi films became escapist with lots of songs. Kashmir Ki Kali was like that. And city boys going to the village, wooing village girls. So that became the norm, escapist. 70s, then we saw all these graduates from Film Institute of India. Then right at the beginning when this was happening, IPTA was one that kept the, you know, Neecha Nagar and Chetan Anand, they kept the film going. And so it's always been like that. And then in 70s was very interesting because you had the middle of the rung. You had Bashu Bhattacharya, you had Bashu Chatterjee, Rajnigandha, then you had Amol Palekar, then you had Rishikesh Mukherjee. So that was the middle of the rung cinema. Then you had Angry Young Man of Amitabh Bachchan, who introduced violence, the violence because the Rajesh Khanna's romantic period was over. Nobody was interested in that kind of lovemaking. So they wanted, you know, retribution, and a different kind of film started coming. And the 70s and then 80s, every film had 2-3 rape scenes and lots of violence. It was the pits. And of course, there were films like Guide and Bandini to break. I mean, there was, you know, that kind of films were also happening. And then came the 90s, which was even worse, because when I remember in Aradhna, am I boring you, or it's okay? I'm carrying on giving a lecture. During Aradhna, this NRI gentleman, the Air India lands, he comes out of and the first thing he does is rape somebody. So all the NRIs were pretty bad. Then suddenly the 90s came and we were wooing the NRIs, and then the pull and push of the globalization. Then Hindi films became very conservative and feel-good factor. And where the 80s were made by fly-by-night operators, here it was Yash Chopra, Karan Johar, and Suraj Barjatia. They were making these wonderful films with lots of production value and no conflict whatsoever. It was just joy, and lots of people, lots of women had started working at that time, but there was no working girl. The Simrans and Nehas were waiting for their Prince Charming to come and take them to La La Land. And marriage was passport to life. So, yeah. And, you know, Kajol, as long as she was tomboyish, had no chance. The moment, you know, her sartorial, it changed, she became, you know, considered, as we were seeing earlier. She fit, you know, there was a tick mark. So, but now I think we are in a wonderful place because the filmmaking, I think the director would be able to say more than that. There is different avenues of filmmaking. You have many screen, you have the small screen, big screen, and there's an appetite in the audience. The audience has changed. They can accept different kind of films. In our time, we only had to do goody-goody roles. And nothing was better than crying and looking helpless. We had to wring our hand and, shed copious tears. Whereas now nobody wants all that tears. So things are moving on, and there is different kinds, Death in the Ganj, Lipstick Under the Burqa, Dam Laga Ke Hai Shah, Mukti Bhavan, different kinds of film being made, and also Bajrangi Bhaijaan or Tube Light and, big films. So everybody has a chance to make films. Audience and the creation of multiplexes has made marketing and dissemination of films so much easier. So, there is, and then many things that has changed for the better. So, and look at the crop of actresses we have. We have Alia, we have Kalki, we have Vidya Balan, we have Konkona, of course, then we have Kangana, then we have so many wonderful actresses. We still need a star for you guys to come to the theater. You won't come if there are newcomers, so that's one drawback that needs to change. And other than that, I think we are in a good place. The narratives are changing, so I'm very hopeful of the future.
Thank you, Sharmila. Oh, God, that went really fast. So thank you very much, Sharmila and Konkona. We didn't get to talk that much, Konkona, but I think it was really worth you coming to hear Sharmila saying that after Satyajit Ray, there's Konkona Sen. I mean, that is high praise. And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here and for celebrating, as I said, the work of both these women, for the wedge that they keep open in the otherwise fairly homogeneous world. Thank you, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you.